Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is the Q&A live stream where you guys get to ask me anything. Usually we talk about how to get hired, jobs, job interviews, any problems you're struggling with right now. That's what we do today. I want to thank Mimi Lynch for being the latest member of my channel. I thanked her yesterday, but that was on an experimental live stream that I did. So I'm not sure if she saw that, but thank you very much. Hope everybody's doing okay. And the title of today's live stream, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's Why They Hired Someone Else. And we're going to talk about that because job interviews are not very effective. I'm serious. They have done a lot of studies on this. There's a lot of data on this over many, many years, over decades. That have been done in management science. So the people that work at universities, that have PhDs, that study business, okay, they have been studying this for a long time, the effectiveness of job interviews, and they came to the conclusion that job interviews are very ineffective, and we've known this for a very long time. And those of you that have played the game of applying for posted jobs and going to job interviews with recruiters where they ask you all these standard questions, what is your weakness? And tell me about yourself. And, what are your strengths? And things like this. They have data. It's well known that that is very ineffective in choosing the right person. And these days, especially, we're seeing kind of the effects of that in terms of employee retention rates. People are staying at jobs for less and less amounts of time. And this is evidence, partly, that the people in those jobs don't particularly like those jobs. They're not suited for them. They're not enjoying themselves. Or they're not particularly good at them. And a huge factor of that is that, it's just not the right job for them. And so each of those people was chosen in a traditional type job interview. And we're seeing the evidence of that. But most people intuitively know this. You go to a job interview and you can tell that they're making their judgment about you, usually from the wrong criteria, from first impressions, from superficial means, things like this. So if that's ever happened to you, there's a chat. So get in the chat. Let me know if you have questions, because basically I don't have too much of an agenda today. I just respond to questions. And it doesn't have to be a question. It could be a statement or a story, whatever you put in the chat. I'm going to keep talking to fill dead air until we get questions. And in the meantime, as always, if you are, relatively new at the whole job search activity and you don't know how to go about it, check out my course. I created that for people that, are having this issue. You don't know how to go about job search. Now, you might have been told sort of the superficial stuff. Go and look for jobs online, apply for them, this sort of stuff. But there's a lot more to it. Okay, that's one way to get a job. It's actually not the most effective way of getting a job. And in my course, I go into more advanced methods. And the most important thing, I think, that's in that course is a lot of people are unaware of how to tap what's known as the hidden job market, the jobs that are there, but they're not posted publicly. Those are the types of jobs that you hear if you have contacts in companies. You hear, from a friend of a friend, they're hiring, right? They haven't posted it publicly yet, but they're actually looking for someone for this role, right? That's an example of a hidden job, right? It's there, it's just not posted publicly. And there are ways of tapping into those and putting yourself forward for those, even if you don't know anyone in the companies, which, face it, most people don't. Julien, Alice is here. Hello, Bill. Hello, Julien. It's nice to see you here. Get in the chat. Give me some questions. Let me know. What are you guys struggling with? What's an area of concern? And what would you like help with? And I will do my best to answer your questions. But no, coming back to the theme of this live stream, if it has a theme, it's that job interviews, traditional job interviews, are very ineffective. And so that leads to the question, if those type of job interviews are so ineffective, why do we keep doing them? Well, here's the answer. Number one, there are more effective methods, but they're very, very labor intensive. Okay, so you've got to spend a lot more man hours with your candidates to be able to make a better selection. And the problem is that especially for worker level jobs, in general, companies and HR departments are unwilling to do that. It's the bang for the buck trade-off, right? Yes, it would be more effective, but we'd have to spend so much more money essentially because of, time. Man hours means money. You need more people to throw out the problem. We'd have to spend so much more money and effort to be able to make better selections that for worker level jobs especially, it's just not feasible. That's the collective decision of HR, of most HR departments, and the way it's taught. And I know this because I've taught it in universities. So, yeah. Still waiting for questions. But this is definitely a thing. Now, if you want evidence of that, if you look at how they get jobs that aren't at the worker level, how you scrutinize your candidates and you discover candidates and how you filter candidates, you look at those and it's a different process. If they want to hire an executive, they don't sit them down and say, tell me about yourself. Have some 21-year-old recruiter that has never worked in any other job in their lives say, tell me about yourself. What does success look like to you? They don't do that. Okay. And you look at what they do and they spend a lot more time with the individuals. It also helps if you're known a little bit within your industry. People they know of you, put it that way. That really helps. Mike says, could they have hired someone else due to them, the employer contacting a previous employer, and they said constant call-offs or late for shift a lot? Yes, that is possible. That's not usually the most likely reason, but yes, that is a thing. Usually they end up, generally speaking, they end up contacting your previous employers. If they do that, they end up doing that later on in the process. So it is possible that is the reason. Usually, if you go down for one interview, there's exceptions to everything, and every organization does the recruitment and selection process slightly different. But generally, you don't often see the situation where you go down for one interview and then you go away and then they start contacting your previous employers. Okay. This is why it's important that when you give references, okay, you make sure that you have spoken to your references first and said, is it okay if I do this? Would you be willing to give me a good reference? Right? Okay, so that's some due diligence there. If you're going to give them the names, phone numbers, and, email addresses or something of your coworkers or your current boss, make sure you go and talk to those people first. Now, if you're currently employed, okay, so your previous employer is also your current employer because you're currently working there, you're wanting to maybe leave and get another job. It is a common thing, it's a well-known thing that you do not supply them with your current boss, okay, if you're still working there. Because the obvious reason is I'm currently working there. My current employer doesn't know that I'm out looking for another job, right? They're not aware of this, and I don't want to alert them to this because I fear that they will take it personally and give me an artificially bad reference if I did, okay? Also, I don't want to jeopardize my current job, my current employment situation by tipping them off that I'm looking to leave, okay? It is in the employer's best interest, generally, if they terminate you or lay you off or, some version of that before you leave, okay? If you leave suddenly and they don't know this is coming, it is disruptive to them. It's better for them if they know that you're leaving and then they terminate you, okay? Because they then hire someone else, they have the person lined up, they start training them, and then they let you go, right? And then it's minimal disruption, okay? Also, the last I don't know, the last period that you're there, usually you're not super productive because you know you're leaving, right? So they avoid all of that, all those issues, right? So for that reason, you don't want to let your current employer know that you're leaving. So what you can do, coming back to Mike's question here, is make sure that if you're going for a job interview and you're applying for a job with a would-be employer, and that would-be employer asks you, can we contact your previous employer or your current employer? You say no, and then you state this reason. They don't know I'm leaving, and I don't want to tip them off. That could jeopardize my current employment situation. I'm sure you understand. And 95% of the time or more, they will accept that excuse. They will say, okay, fair enough. You say, I can give you a reference from, say, a coworker of mine, or one or two coworkers where I currently work. I'm comfortable doing that. So if you want that, but that's the best I can do. And usually they won't have an issue with that. Okay. So if there's any chance that your current boss is going to give you a bad reference in any way, don't risk it. Just don't give them the reference for your current boss. Okay. It's also a good practice for other reasons too. Okay. Sometimes it has been known, it's not typical, but it has been known that recruiters will sabotage your current job if they can, if you're going to a competitor. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Your current boss will sabotage you if you're leaving them to go to a competitor. Things like this. So just bear that in mind. But that's a good question, Mike. Okay, how do you say this? Azteca? That sounds familiar. Good morning. I had an interview with the assessor's office for an assistant manager position. I got an email saying I've been placed on a pre-qualified candidacy list. If another position becomes available, I may be offered the position. What do you think of this? In all honesty, that sounds like a bunch of HR BS jargon, to be honest. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by, what was it? Pre-qualified candidacy list. Does that mean they decided not to go with you for the current job that you applied for, but HR has kept your resume and flagged it as someone that might be suitable for another position if it comes along? Like, is that what that means? There is no standard industry lingo for HR, just so you know. I mean, each company, or certainly each industry, they use their own terms for stuff like this. So you're asking me now, if that's what they're referring to, and you're asking me, what do I think of this? That is a legitimate thing. Most organizations do this. In the HR department, they may not hire you. You apply for something. They bring you in for an interview. They may not select you, but they still thought you were pretty good. Okay? So they keep your resume on file. They put a little flag on it saying, this person looks good. They could be a shoo-in for another position that comes along. So that is a thing, and they keep it on file for a certain amount of time, 3 months, 6 months, something like that. Okay? So that is a thing. It could also be, I hate to say this, but it could also be a kiss-off. When they say, like, well, the job's on hold. Well, it's not on hold. It's just, sorry, we said no. It's a no. We went with someone else. It could be that. You don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not important for you to know. The only relevant thing is that it's a no, certainly for now. Just keep moving. Go and pursue new opportunities. Okay? Okay. We don't need to care about their internal thought processes. We just have to keep moving on. We will never know their internal thought processes, so it's sometimes a good thing we don't know their internal thought process, because if you found out some of the stupid reasons why they rejected you, you would probably get mad. That's usually how it goes. Limaz says, hi, Bill. Hi, Limaz. It's good to see you here again. Julian Alice says, I did networking. I did informational interviews with managers the way you taught me. It went great. I got compliments of how professional and elegant I was. A month later, I asked them for a job, but still nothing. Okay, yeah. Listen, like, the whole point of informational interviews is that you should not in any way tie it to asking them for anything, like a job. You can't sell them anything. You can't ask for a job. Like, that's the thing, because it sort of, how can I put this? It bursts the illusion, okay? The whole point of an informational interview is you go there wanting information. All I want from you is just if you could spare me some of your time, I'd love to ask you a few questions and get some answers. Okay? So that's what you're there for. Okay? Now, if you then turn around at some point and say, like, yeah, are you hiring? I can do this. I mean, it's very hard to tie the two things together, without it seeming like, oh, okay, I see what this was all about. The jig's up. You're not here for information. You're really here for a job. I get it. So and then of course the whole thing just goes south at that point. Okay. So it's very delicate. Now, the way I kind of recommend people to do it generally is you do your informational interview. Okay. So you do it. The whole purpose of it is for them to get them to like you. Okay. That's really what you want. I mean, the information is hopefully useful too, but that's really kind of how it helps you, is that you get these people to know of you, to be impressed with you, they like you. Then you have to go away. You have to go away. Like, okay, that's it. And then at some point in the future, maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, then you could think about possibly contacting them again and initiating another interaction. This time, maybe asking about employment opportunities or partnerships or something like that. Or communicating like, look, I can do this, and based on our conversation, I know that now that you guys do this, and based on our conversation, I know now that I'd like to work for you if possible. So if ever you're looking, just let me know, like that kind of thing. It's kind of a no pressure type thing. That's really how it works. Okay. Like informational interviews, remember, the other aspect of them is that you're doing these with people that you don't know if they're even hiring. Like, that's the whole point. They could just not be hiring. So it's kind of weird to like say, hire me, in that process. It's very delicate. There's a lot to this. I lay it all out in my course, by the way, like in a logical step-by-step kind of way. But yeah, it's just, the other thing, Julian, is that it's a learning process. Once you do a few of these, hopefully you will see why I advise doing it in a certain way. Because if you deviate from that, you run into various different issues. But I'm glad that you're doing them, and I'm glad that, like, hopefully that's opened up some possibilities for you in the future. First of all, number one, you get direct benefits out of this. Like, you feel more confident, you can talk to people, your communication skills, your conversational skills, your networking skills have gone up, and they will go up when you do this. Secondly, it allows you to sort of, I don't want to use the word infiltrate, but to connect with organizations of which you have no prior connection. They don't know you, you don't know them, but you can get on the inside, you can get to know them, you can get them to the point where they are now a contact. If you ever have a question, you can pick up the phone and call the person, like that's the head of this business unit in this company. Now you can do that, and they'll take your call because they know who you are and they like you. It's a very powerful tool. Azteca says, I did not give my current employer's number and said the same thing. Figured they'd take it personal. Can that affect me as far as hiring me? And said the same thing. Oh, you mean like you said what I was saying, my recommendation, but they still contacted your previous employer? Is that what you're saying? You didn't give them the current employee's like phone number, I'm assuming, and said the same thing. Figured they'd take it personal. Can that affect me as far as hiring me? Sorry, if you could spell out what you're referring to precisely, Azteca, that would help. Because I don't know what you mean by saying the same thing. Just spell it out. What did you say? Julien, today I asked a manager in the biggest organization in the industry in my city for ideas, contacts, or advice for the job search. I hope I get something out of it. Yeah. Well, best of luck. Like, I mean, I don't want to discourage you. Generally, though, when you ask someone to help you find a job, it usually is not the best way. I mean, I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because everything works sometimes. But generally, if you approach somebody and basically your message is, help me find a job, usually, I mean, there's no, unless they're like really, really close with you or something, there's really not a lot of incentive for them to go and champion you. Okay. If they know of something, I'm sure they probably mention it, but if they don't just know of something off the top of their head, chances are they're not going to go out and do any work to find you a job. Okay. So, there's no harm in asking, I suppose, in a lot of situations, but generally this is not the most promising way of doing it. Okay. I hope it works out. Okay, but it's usually much more effective if you just do a bunch of informational interviews that are targeted, that are highly targeted. There are people in your industry, in places that are relatively near you. If you have to, like, unless you're doing remote work and you're commuting, it's nice to get places that are near. You don't have to drive like 150 miles or something to physically meet them. So they're targeted, they're in your industry, they're near you, and these are individuals that are decision makers, usually high up. Okay, the higher the better. Okay, preferably executives. I mean, you should be talking to executives. This doesn't really work too well with middle managers or workers, so you should be talking with executives. Okay, they're the ones that it's easiest to do this with. Number one, they have free time to do this. Number two, it's part of their job. And number three, they tend to be really approachable, generally speaking. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, executives are the people to go to. I mean, if you talk to an executive and they think you're awesome, they're like, wow, they're impressed with like what you said earlier, I believe. Yeah, like your professionalism, how passionate you are, how knowledgeable you are. You seem to have totally the right attitude. Now, if you have the skills to back it up, you got the skills and the attitude, that's 2 out of 2. So, I mean, they're always kind of indirectly looking for good people, right? So if they think you're awesome and you go away and then, you initiate another thing and, a certain number of weeks later, a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, usually maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, and say, hey, I was thinking about something you said. And just so you know, if ever you guys have an opening for someone who can do this, let me know, because I was quite impressed with what you told me about your company. And, there may be some opportunity for us to do something. So, so I mean, that's usually a very promising way to do it. Limos, Bill, would you be interested if I created a few thumbnails for your videos? I think it would be pretty great deal since you wanted someone who could take care of it. I'm looking to gain a few extra bucks. I'm not looking for that particularly, but if you have a bright idea, you could email me one and we'll see. I mean, no promises, but I'll see what you got if you're telling me you can do an amazing job. Just so you know, I mean, I have never paid for anyone to do anything with my YouTube channel before. I've done the entire thing myself. Just, not that that's a policy or anything, but this is all me, like everything. In some areas as amateur as it is. That's why it's amateur like this, because it's basically me. But I won't say no. Azteca, I did give references of people we closely work with. Okay, I mean you closely work with, but none of my coworkers, as they would tell my boss right away. Okay. Oh, I see. Your company constantly works with. I closely works with. I work in a small law firm, and I pretty much handle a little bit of everything here. Okay. That makes sense. Julian says, I wanted to do a lot of informational interviews. However, people here are not very familiar with this. And I mean, HR managers. Don't talk to HR managers about informational interviews. That's really not who you want to be talking to. Okay. HR will try to funnel you through their official system. Okay. Like to handle candidates applying for a job. Right. Don't do informational interviews with HR managers. They don't get it. Like they'll tell you to apply online, or go and talk to a recruiter, like entry-level recruiter down at the bottom. No. Informational interviews, you do it with executives. You do it with decision makers. If it's a smaller company, it'll be the owner, the head manager, whether that's a CEO or just a general manager. If it's a larger company, you'll do it with executives of some kind. People that have power and authority and they're decision makers. They're not workers who know nothing, no offense, but they don't know anything. They don't have any power to hire someone, for example. Middle managers, nope, because they're too damn busy. They have actual jobs to do. They have a huge workload. And usually their jobs don't require them to face the public, okay? I mean, it depends what part of the company you work in, but generally speaking, you're not facing the public if you're a middle manager. If you're like a plant manager, you're working in operations, you're a plant manager, okay? Or a shop manager or a facility manager, you're not taking queries from the public. That's not part of your job. Your job is to run the plant. You're dealing with employees, you're dealing with vendors. So if somebody contacts you from outside the company that you don't know and you don't have any business dealings with, your reaction is going to be like, what? Who the hell are you? What do you want? Well, why do you want to talk to me? What do you want to ask me? Why do you want to ask me those questions? No, that's kind of their reaction, right? And they're too busy anyway. Executives, they're the ones that you do this with. Number one, they know a lot. They can tell you a lot, okay? Number two, they have the authority. If they wanted to hire you, they could hire you on the spot if they wanted to, okay? Number three, it's part of their official job to take unsolicited queries from the public. If the press want to do an article or a documentary on your industry or on your company, who do you think they're going to contact? They're going to contact the executive, one of the executives, CEO or the others. If they want to do an interview and get some answers to questions, this is what they'll do. If they're a potential vendor or potential partner in some way, supplier, they're not going to contact workers or middle managers. They're going to contact an executive. Say, like, I'm just reaching out. Maybe there's a chance we could work together. I'm not sure. I don't know how we could help each other. We're both in the same industry. You seem to be a supplier of the stuff that we use in our manufacturing thing. So maybe there's some potential there. I don't know. I'm just sort of wanting to have an initial meeting and make contact, see if there's potential overlap there. Like, this is how they reach out. They reach out to executives. So if you have an executive that is going to say, what? Who are you? What the hell are you doing contacting me? No, I don't want to talk to you. Like, that's bad for business. If it's the government, if it's a regulator, if it's an industry association, they reach out to the organization, and they get that reaction. That's bad for business. So it's part of executives' job to basically field unsolicited queries from the public. You don't know who these people are. So this is great because you can come in there and say, like, look, I just would love to have half an hour of your time to ask you some questions about your industry. I'd love to get your expert opinion. Would that be okay? Name me a time, date, place of your convenience, and I'll be there. And, a lot of people say, sure. They don't know who you are, but they'll say, sure, yeah, we could do that. And then you go down there, you ask intelligent questions, you make them feel really good. They enjoy talking to you. Great things can happen and great things do. So don't talk to HR. You do not want to talk to HR on this because they won't understand it, especially someone who isn't the head of HR, someone lower down. Usually great things won't happen if you do it, if you apply it like that. Where did I leave off here? Okay, the HR thing. Azteca says, I know, oh, this thing keeps jumping on me. I know if I leave, it would be a big hit to my employer, but there's no room for advancement anymore, and I feel it's time to go Jiao elsewhere. You go, I agree with you. I've had to Jiao elsewhere too several times. If you're in a branch office stuck out in some remote location, yeah, there's limited opportunities for advancement unless you want to uproot your entire life and potentially move to another country. So yes, that's a common thing. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it's certainly not an unheard of thing. You got to do what's right for you, you know? I mean, you don't want to go out and actively screw over your employer, but I mean, you got to prioritize yourself. This is how the system works. You know, organizations that employ people prioritize themselves over their employers as certainly the general rule. There are maybe some exceptions, I suppose, but generally speaking, that's how they're operating. So you do the same, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. What you want is a situation where the employer the employee wants to stay at that organization because it's the best thing for them, and the employer wants to keep the employee employed because it's the best thing for them. That's what you want. That's what we search for. Buteween. I remember Buteween. Do they hire someone else because the resume passed ATS? And how often are employers checking experience references? Also, is hiring cyclical better to get in easier during hiring phases? Okay, if you improve your grammar and use some punctuation, it would really help understand what you're saying when you write a sentence that's a paragraph long. Do they hire someone else because the resume passed ATS? You mean someone else's resume passed ATS and yours didn't? Is that what you're asking? Of course. The answer is of course. Yeah, usually if they have ATS, an applicant tracking software system, your resume has to pass that filter before they will bring you in for an interview. So yes, it's a requirement. If they have it, it's a requirement. That's usually how it goes. And how often are employers checking experience and references? Well, that varies. It varies basically by organization. Some companies are very trustworthy. Some industries, are very trustworthy because there's not a lot of fraud. They haven't had a lot of issues with that. Other industries, they really don't believe anything you say, and they verify as much as they possibly can. So there isn't a standard thing. It varies from one extreme to the other depending on where you are and at what level you are. Generally, the bigger the organization, the more formal their policies will be for hiring, and so the more they will verify. Okay? The lower the level, like if you're at the worker level, the entry level, that's where they will verify the most. You would think it would be the opposite, but it's actually they verify everything and everyone. It's at higher levels where somebody's bringing in someone that they've worked with in the past and that you know of because they've been a presence in your industry for the last 20 years. You don't have to verify quite as much with that type of situation. They tend to trust people a little more. Maybe that's not the right thing to do, but that's what we see. Now, how often are employers checking experience and references? Well, if they ask for references, it's a good bet that they're going to be checking them. Okay, so usually it's a standard practice. Now, what I've seen for references is at lower levels, they'll ask you for references, give 3 references, maybe a previous boss and some coworkers. I've done management and executive interviews where they want at least 9. They want we want 3 people that you reported directly to. We want 3 people that worked with you, and then we want 3 subordinates. And then you give them more than 3 sometimes because they might not be able to get a hold of somebody. So, I've seen all kinds. but they do check them. They do check them. If you go through an external HR company, like a lot of, increasingly, as we go into the future, a lot of companies are sort of farming out their recruitment and selection to outside HR companies. And if you go through one of them, they most likely will be checking references, because that's what they do. That's the services they provide. You know, you might not have the time to like check references on every candidate. We do it for you, and we make sure it's done properly. So yes. And by checking experience, usually it just means they call up your employer or your coworkers and they just ask them over the phone, like, what describe this person's job? Do they do this? Do they do that? You know, and then that's the extent of how they check experience. Now, I don't know what you mean by, is hiring cyclical better to get in easier during hiring phases? It can go both ways. It can go both ways. Like if you're talking worker level jobs, it's possibly better to get in during a hiring phase, because then they're just like producing candidates in batches. They're checking references all in, like, you know, they're checking the references of 20 people all at once. Okay. But if you're higher up, first of all, I don't believe they have really hiring phases for like managers and things, but, you know, you want them to care and to pay attention to you. You want them to do it right. You don't want them to lump you in with everyone else and not even remember who you are, usually. I don't think it matters, Buteween. Like if you're talking about worker level stuff, it doesn't matter if you get in during a hiring phase or not. No, I don't think it really does. As long as they hire you, you know, it doesn't matter if they hire 20 other people at the same time or just you. If it's part of a large organization, they're supposed to follow exactly the same process. And in my experience, they do. So it shouldn't matter. Buteween, sorry for the loaded question. Thanks for everything you do. How often do you think hiring is a buddy system? Well, it's not really a buddy system. Like here's the thing. I've used the analogy before of like, let's say you had to move homes. You know, you had one apartment and you went to another apartment or something, and you got to move your stuff. Now you can't do it yourself for whatever reason. So you have to get someone to help you. Okay. So you have to hire someone. Maybe you hire a friend or you get a stranger. If you don't know anyone, it's a, maybe you're in a new city or something. You don't know anyone. So you got to find someone that's going to help you move your stuff. Now, the problem is this person is going to be handling all your personal stuff. Okay. So trusting them is pretty important, right? Because they will have the opportunity to not just damage your things, but they will be able to steal whatever, they'll be able to help themselves to all your personal items. Okay. If they wanted to, they could. Okay. You can't be standing over them every moment, you know, that they're there. So who would you get to help you? This is like an analogy of a company hiring an employee. Would you get someone that you know and that you trust because you've had dealings with them before? Yeah, that would probably be a big advantage, right? As opposed to hiring a stranger that you don't know who this person is. Oh, sure, on their resume they say that they're, you know, a sort of fine, upstanding person, but you don't know, right? Now, would you trust that person, that stranger, to then just move all your stuff and you're not even there to observe everything they're doing? Probably not, right? So the fact that you know them is a real advantage, simply because if you know them, it's not like you know them and you know that they're a criminal. You know them and you know that they're trustworthy. That's the idea, right? So that is an advantage, because you're going to have to trust this person with something that's valuable of yours. That's what companies do. They open the door and the employee comes in. The employee has access to all their data systems and, you know, their inventory and their equipment. And I mean, if they were a criminal or they were malevolent in some way, they wanted to do some damage, they would be able to, right? So so trust is important. You want to not just let anyone in through the door and give them access to all your stuff. So that's where the personal connection comes in. It's not that I'm hiring you because I know you. It's that if it's a choice between someone I know that I had good dealings with in the past or someone I don't know at all who could be lying through their teeth about everything they've told me, all things being equal, I'll take the person I know because at least I know what I'm getting and I have worked with them before and they seem pretty trustworthy. So that's an advantage over a complete stranger. That's the idea. So is it super important that you know them? No, but that's the advantage. Now, if someone in the organization has worked with that person before and they put in a good word, they say, look, I've worked with that candidate before. I've worked 5 years with them and they're pretty good. We worked side by side for 5 years. I trust them. As much as you'd reasonably trust a coworker. They seemed fine. We never had integrity issues with that person. All the people that worked with that person that I observed seemed to like them. They weren't crazy. They weren't a criminal. They weren't super off-putting. They didn't cause a lot of issues or personal issues. They were never accused of theft or sabotage or, they didn't have anger issues or attitude issues. So, I'm like, you trust me. I've worked here for 10 years with you. Okay. I'm giving you my personal recommendation that I think they're pretty good. So I'm staking my reputation to recommend them. Now, if they hire that person that I recommended, then they turn out to be a criminal that sabotages the company, sells all their personal information to a competitor, and sets fire to the place or something, are you ever going to trust me ever again? Of course not. I've just ruined my future prospects at this company. So that's why the personal recommendation carries weight. Okay. Now, if you know some people, great. But look, if you don't know people, like most of the time, this is what the informational interviews do. You have an independent encounter with somebody high up in an organization. They see that you're awesome. You're professional. You're charismatic. You have the right attitude. You're very knowledgeable, and they got along with you great. That was like a preview of if you guys had to work together. They really enjoyed it, right? So this is like you're planting the seeds of that. So then if you come back later and apply for a job in some way, you've got a personal connection there, right? Like that's the advantage. This person says, oh, I know them. And they're really good. I'd much rather go with them than a complete stranger. Right? That's the principle behind these things. So the personal connection isn't the be all end all, but that's its value. The value is that it, compared to a complete stranger, at least this person, has something really going in their favor in your ability to trust them and trust that, say, their resume is accurate and they're not hiding anything. It's not some kind of fraud where they're lying through their teeth about their experience or whatever. So it's not really a buddy system. It's just that's the value of a personal recommendation, right? Mike says, Bill, just want to thank you. Due to this channel, got hired last week. Well, congratulations. During the interview process, was leaning into the interviewer, listening, answering the questions with memorized stories. Well, good. So it sounds like you did your preparation and it paid off. And congratulations. That's great news. I'm sure you're going to be, you're much relieved. It continues. And I think what got me hired was your advice to have their back. The interviewer had headaches unloading the Tuesday delivery. My response was, how about I work Tuesday to handle that? Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, you want to, why is my thing frozen? My thing just froze for a second. Okay, we're back. Anyway, no, that's a great story, Mike. It's like you want to signal to them that you are very helpful and you're somewhat flexible and you're accommodating. If they hire you, you won't be the type of employee that goes, it's not my job. No, wasn't hired for that. They ask you to do something and you're the type of person that goes, well, it says in my contract, I don't have to do that. So no, right? Like you're just a headache. You're just trouble, right? Now, I mean, within reason, of course. But the point is that if they have an issue, you're like, hey, I can maybe help you with that. Here, give it to me. I'll take care of it. Bosses love employees like that. You would love to hire a whole bunch of employees that were super helpful like that. And hopefully you're the type of boss that then shows your appreciation. It's like, thanks for helping me with that. I had like 20 years ago or something, I had my eyes opened by working at a smaller company. I worked for large corporations up until that point. And then I worked for a smaller company. It had like 50 employees. And I was just absolutely blown away by what I saw. You had workers, like people that worked in a machine shop type setting, and the boss would come to them and say, I need you to work overtime. I need you to stay today and finish this job. It might take another 2 or 3 hours or something. And then when it's done, I need you to drive to the next city, 200 miles away, deliver it and install it tonight and stay in a hotel if you need to, and then come back tomorrow. Can you do that? And the employee says, sure, not a problem. And I was like, holy crap. I'd never seen that before. I'm used to more of I had been more used to the union type situation where it's like, nope, not my job. You gotta canvas, seniority, and I'm not doing it. And nobody's volunteering for it. It's like, no, these people were super helpful. And they did that. And they were all like that. And then I realized why they were like that, because an employee calls in and calls the boss and say, sorry, I'm sick today. I can't come in. It's like, I can barely get out of bed. I'm actually still in bed. And the boss says, don't worry about it. Take all the time you need. Come in when you're ready. No worries. Get well soon, And it's like, there you go. There's the give and take. It's like wonderful working relationship, So it's like, who are you going to hire when you're in that organization? You're going to hire people that are helpful, that have that kind of attitude. And you're going to, and fortunately, you're the type of boss that treats workers like that. It's like, you do me a favor, it's not a problem. I'll do what I can for you. And together we're going to succeed. And this company, even though it was small, it got a lot of the really great workers in the city, and even though they couldn't pay them as much because they were treated properly, So it's like, yeah. So even if you go to a big corporation, or whatever, people really appreciate that helpful attitude. If you show that during a job interview and you're dealing with certainly a hiring manager, that really goes far. So that's a great story, Mike, that shows that. I'm sure that probably, like you suspect, I'm sure that sealed the deal right there when you said that. Because that's the type of thing that most people are looking for. Kubile, if I'm saying that right. Kubile says, hi, I come from an area where every employer looks for at least 3 years of pro experience, and your super good grades in university don't mean much. This area is AI machine learning. What does WDY mean? Does that mean why recommend? Is that what you're asking? Why is that? Yeah, I mean, that's not unheard of. That's a relatively common thing. There's a lot of people, and I'm not putting down fresh graduates or anything, but there's a lot of people that come out of university, and it's great that you have awesome grades, and that's good. I mean, I'm not putting it down, but when you work as an employee, for most jobs, not all jobs, but for most jobs, the most important factor in getting you to be productive is not quite how smart you were, but your ability to work with others around you. Okay? And that's the type of thing you're going to learn with experience. Okay? You're going to learn many things with experience, but that's one of the big ones. Because, for example, a lot of times in an organization, in a work type situation, I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You don't always get your way. You don't always get to pick and choose what work you do or how it's done or when it's done or any of this. So it's not always going to be to your liking. And some people are, better at handling that than others. And just the reality is, unfortunately, like having been a worker and then having been a boss, I know this. It's like, sorry. I mean, I'd love to accommodate you if I can, but I just can't accommodate everyone. If everyone wants to do a different approach to solve the same problem, you can't always just let everyone go 15 different ways. You got to decide on one way it's all going to be done, and then everyone has to work towards it and follow that way of doing it. Now, if you don't realize this, you're used to getting your way, you're used to working on assignments solo, and doing it the way you want, you're going to quickly learn that look, I've made my best case for why we should choose my way, but I lost. For whatever reason, they decided to go with this other way, but now I have to support it. Okay. Now, for example, if you can't accept a situation like that, it doesn't matter what grades you got. You could be a genius. You could be Albert Einstein. It doesn't matter. Your productivity is next to zero. Okay. If you can't proceed from that point. So that's why having experience and stuff, one of the reasons why having experience is pretty damn useful, because you would have learned lessons like that, presumably already. If you haven't had experience, you've just come out of school, you may not know that yet. They don't know if you know that or not. You may not know it. Okay? So that's one of the reasons they put requirements like that. Now, remember, requirements are not always requirements. A lot of times they write a list of things that are kind of nice to have, and then they call it requirements, right? So don't let that dissuade you from applying if it's a job that you really, really want. Okay? Very important. Okay, this jumped on me again. Where did I leave off? Here we go. So that was Kubilay. So hopefully that makes sense. Farouk says, I always believe in going above and beyond, both as employee and boss. Whenever or wherever I've worked, even down to tidying up and washing coffee mugs, whatever needs doing, just do it. Good. That's the beginnings of a good attitude. Of course, you do understand that has its limits. You can't just take that to its logical conclusion. You would never finish. There wouldn't be enough hours in the day, right? So beyond a certain point, you have to have a way to manage it, or you'll run yourself absolutely ragged. But it's a great attitude to start with. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't know if I should be brave enough to try. Let's see. Przemslav Zaloga? I'm sure I got that right. Hello, I just finished a job interview. Me and the interviewer shared a few laughs. He asked a lot of behavioral questions. I think I did fine. I was smiling and outgoing the entire time. Good. I kept emphasizing how I'm an approachable, pragmatic guy who's willing to work together to get things done. Okay, well, good. That's a huge strength if you can signal that to them, right? Like, saying it is good, but they may not believe you. If you can say it and they believe you, or you can signal it through your actions or your behavior or answers to questions, that's what we're going for here. So yes, very important. And it's good that you had what sounds like a more pleasant interview. At least, you were laughing about stuff. There's a lot of interviews that people go to and it just like, holy crap, it's awkward. It's unpleasant. You just want to get the hell out of there. You don't want to see these people ever again. It's always amazed me how people in HR, people that choose to go into an area where you deal with people, right, can be so bad at having a conversation with somebody else. Like, some of the interviewing skills of some of the people that have become recruiters or go into recruitment and selection, it's like, why? I don't understand why you want to do this, because you do not have a knack with people. You don't understand them, and your communication skills are very poor. you're not very charismatic. You don't have a lot of personal charisma, nor do you really seem interested in developing any of that stuff. So it just seems quite strange to me. It's something I've always wondered, It's like, why? I mean, that's perfectly fine. Not everybody is strong in everything. I mean, I'm certainly not, amazing at like a lot like that. That's definitely kind of my weak areas. I'm more of a technical guy. So dealing with lots of people and lots of different types of people, that's not my number one strength, but I have a desire to learn it and to be good at it. I always have, or I have since I was, say, 30. But a lot of people that I've noticed that are interviewing people, it's like, holy crap, you can't do an interview to save your life. You're really not representing your organization very effectively. Murica says, I was invited to an online job interview with 2 supervisors and 1 training manager. Only one of the supervisors showed up for the interview and had his camera off. Should I bother perusing more? Should I bother further pursuing this company? If it's a place you want to work, then the default response would be yes. I mean, if they pissed you off so much that you feel awful about having any further interactions with them, then maybe the answer should be no. I mean, you got to take care of your mental health and stuff. And if it's just super unpleasant, or it just annoyed you a lot, I mean, that's up to you to answer. But I mean, if it's a job you want, don't let the fact that these people have no social skills prevent you from potentially getting a good job. Okay. Now, I interpret that. I mean, okay, if you do an online interview with somebody and they have their camera off, personally, I interpret that as a sort of mild insult. It's not very welcoming. If you want me to have my camera on, you turn on yours, that's kind of how I think personally. I mean, I don't know if these are rules of any kind, but that's just how I take it. That's how I read that situation. I used to get annoyed as an instructor. The last sort of thing that I taught in university was just at the very beginning of the COVID thing. And, so they, instead of going to a physical classroom, they moved lectures and stuff online, which seemed really stupid to me. Like in the sense that you could just watch a video. Why teach a live lecture remotely? But a lot of the students had their cameras off, which is, I know it's kind of the default thing, but I was kind of annoyed by that. I was saying, like, look, you guys aren't responding and you've got your camera off. It's like, turn your damn cameras on. I got my camera on. I want to see that you're actually paying attention. And I've done some online stuff, and that, to me, that's typical of like a lot of recruiters. Like, this is what I'm talking about when, I say that some of them just have no business really conducting interviews as their 9-to-5 kind of thing that they do for money because they're so bad at it. It's basic social protocol, right? Like, for example, if you go to shake someone's hand, the protocol is that they shake yours, right? If you offer your hand and they don't offer theirs, that's considered very rude, right? Certainly in Western culture. So, just little social cues like that. So yeah, some interviewers and stuff don't even know these basic things that I thought everyone was aware of. Okay, my good buddy Przemslav says, yes, I asked a bunch of questions about company culture, current projects, dress code, stuff like how projects relate to things like the company's social and environmental responsibility goals too. Okay, I kind of wanted to emphasize that I actually care not only about the position, but the entire company as an entity, so to speak. Okay. At the end of the day, the interviewer is also human, so I think it's kind of important to make the interview feel like a nice conversation rather than a chore to them. Yes. That last part, absolutely true. And I've talked about that. You want to turn it into a conversation like a two-way conversation rather than an interrogation. Okay. And what I've said previously in videos and stuff is the easiest way to do that is when they fire a question at you, you answer it, and then you end with a question of your own. You say, is that kind of what you're looking for? Or something like that. And then they start to talk a little bit informally, and then you start to respond to it. And next thing you know, you've got a two-way, free-flowing conversation. You know, there's some job interviews you go to, and I remember going to some of these early in my career, and it's like you feel like they're almost like shining a light in your face. You know, they're just like, they're grilling you. It's like an interrogation. You know, it's like, those usually don't feel very good. And if you're not having a good time, a lot of times they're not particularly having fun. So the more enjoyable you can make it, that's definitely a factor, because it's regarded as like a preview of what it's like to work with you as an employee. I mean, if you can't even be likable in a job interview, you're probably not going to be likable once they've hired you. That's the thinking. We all know that that's flawed. That's not necessarily true, but that's how they think, right? Their first impression is you're not very likable. You know, you're kind of awkward and tense, right? Your answers are forced. It's like pulling teeth trying to have a conversation with you. That could be because you're nervous as hell, and you could be nervous as hell because they're really not helping you. You know, they've created an environment that's just nerve-wracking, and it's unwelcoming. They might have been slightly rude to you, you know, maybe not even realizing it because they're kind of tuned out. You know, maybe they're gruff and, you know, they don't ask you how you're doing, or, you know, just common social pleasantry. So it feels very awkward, and you tend to you don't feel at ease. And then they judge you on the fact that, you know, you don't feel at ease. You feel awkward and tense. Why is that? You got something to hide? You know, it's stupid. If someone asks me, like, should you ask about dress code and the company's social and environmental responsibility goals, I would say no, because what is more powerful is just knowing what the dress code is and knowing what their corporate social responsibility policies and goals are. Because usually you can get the latter from the website, you can get the former by just being in the industry. So when you go there and you ask these things explicitly, it kind of sounds, to me, personally, just my opinion, it sounds a little bit like a rookie question. What's the dress code here? It's like, well, the dress code here will be the dress code for this entire industry. And by asking that question, you're kind of signaling that you don't know basic stuff like that, you know? So I'm not saying you can't or you shouldn't ask it, but I'd watch it doesn't signal stuff like that. Now you're telling me that you did that and it went fine. So great. Not an issue. And, you know, you got to read the situation, right? Doesn't matter what I think about generalities. You got to read the situation. So it sounds like it went really well. And thanks for sharing. And I'm sure I'm saying your name wrong. I apologize for it. Przemysław. That's great. It just rolls off the tongue. Doug says, I've been interviewing lately for tech positions and have been in the industry over 25 years, and the recruiters I'm meeting lately have zero experience, and some are less than 25 years old. Insane. Yes, I know. This is what I'm talking about. It's like, how is that person going to make a real informed judgment of which candidate is best for the role? Right? I'm not putting down young people. I'm really not. But it's a silly situation to put it shouldn't be an entry-level job, in my opinion. I mean, I understand why it is. It's all about cost effectiveness. They figure like, okay, hiring a new candidate, it's almost like finance. You know, you're playing on risk versus return. You know, like we could put more effort into really locking down like the right candidate. But when we do that, the amount of money we have to throw at the problem goes up exponentially. We've got to spend a lot of time with them. We've got to have much more experienced people talking to them to be able to make these determinations. That means you got to take like hiring managers, you got to take the boss away from doing their job and have them sit in job interviews all day. That's the problem, right? A lot of times the boss can't afford to do that. They got a place to run, right? So it's very costly to have the boss away from their position. Not only are you paying for this person's time, but the amount that, of damage done in a sense that because of them being away from their post for hours and hours every day to sit in job interviews is very detrimental. So there's a direct and an indirect cost of that. So they don't want to do that. So it's like, okay, let's just give it to, entry-level person. Let's ask a few basic things. Let's check a few basic things, and then we accept the risk. There's like a 25% chance that, we hired the wrong person, whatever. Like we hired a person that turned out to be unsuited to the role, or, whatever. Or maybe they're not perfectly suited, but we're willing to live with that, So it's a very calculated decision that the HR industry has taken. This is what has formed the way they do things. And then a lot of organizations just accept this as the way it's done, right? So for lower level positions, that's how they do it. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, you could be a technician. You could be paid like easily six figures. You could, like if you're disgruntled or something, you not only do valuable work that brings in a lot of money, it brings in easily 10 times more than they're paying you. And then on top of that, you're interfacing with customers, the representatives of industrial customers or something that, like, if you piss them off, they end the contract with your company, right? So a lot is riding on getting the right person in that tech position, a lot more than the company seems to be aware, right? You get the wrong person in there, they do a lot of damage. They can lose millions upon millions of dollars of work, and then it's going to cost your company hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and get that work back, through the marketing arm of the organization, right? All because they had a 21-year-old entry-level recruiter, their first job ever, choosing a technician when they themselves know nothing about any kind of technical subject. Yes, I agree. Murica Stuff says, should I go to a job interview I've been invited to, even if I haven't done everything in the past, which is listed on the job description? Are things on job descriptions absolute must-haves or optional? Great question, Murica. We see all kinds. Sometimes they are. The requirements are requirements, but a lot of times they're not. A lot of times, like I said earlier in the stream, they're a list of things that are nice to have. They're nice to haves, but they're not absolute hard requirements. And you see this when you get the job through networking. Now, for example, like I mentioned a teaching gig that I did a few years ago, just on the side for fun. I taught in university. For example, that job, it was at a university. So universities are very formal. They're very big organizations, very formal. So they had posted these jobs publicly. We have a position open for a teacher in this faculty to teach these subjects. And it had all kinds of stuff on there for requirements. You have to have previous teaching experience. You have to have this, you have to have that. It's like, I didn't have any previous teaching experience. Now, I didn't apply for the job formally. What I did was I got it through networking. I talked to somebody, that was in that department, and I let it slip that, I'd be interested in teaching. Maybe, it's kind of interesting. I've never done that. I've done this and I've done that are kind of related to it, but I've never been a teacher. And they said, you know what? You should apply for this. We're looking for teachers. You should apply for it. Apply for this job, and we'll see what happens. And then I did the interview, which was with the same person. And then it's not like they were, the real decision maker, but for some reason it was like, come in and we'll do an interview. And I talked to them. And it's like, I didn't have any teaching experience. So I'm a teacher, I've never taught in a classroom in my life, and I'm teaching university. Now, I'm not saying that's stupid, because I believe I held my own, and I knew the material because I've been out in the industry for many years. But that's an example. So they have all these things listed under requirements, and they're not requirements, you know? So yes, it's worth it if it's a job you really want, and you don't have to do just an absolute ton of extra work to apply for it. In answer to your question, Murica. Like, I wouldn't do that for every job. Like, I wouldn't just start applying for jobs that, you only have maybe half of what they're asking for or something, and go to great lengths. All these like fancy things where they make you apply online and they make you copy your entire resume into the fields, into the form. I mean, I don't know. And you have to create an account and like all the other stuff you got to jump through, all the hoops you got to jump through, I'm a job seeker. I jump through hoops. So if it's not like super labor intensive, sure. Doug M says, I'm definitely not putting down young people, but have some knowledge of the position or industry. It wasn't this way 10 years ago. Guess I'm showing my age. Well, maybe it wasn't as prevalent 10 years ago. I can tell you they did have this going on 10 years ago. They had young 21-year-old recruiters in there. They had 21-year-old recruiters in there like 20 years ago. Maybe it wasn't quite as common, but, like some of the first roles I applied for like engineering positions, and it's like, you're going to a job interview and you're talking to someone who's 21 years old. This is the first career job they've ever had. They know nothing about engineering. I don't know if they really understand what engineering is. They certainly don't have any technical background whatsoever. And they're doing a job interview to decide your suitability of whether you're the right person for an engineering role. I remember that just striking me as really stupid and weird. And it was. It was stupid. And it's weird. I realize why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're only they're filtering you out on several basic things that are very low level things. Like, for example, if you go there and you've got just a terrible attitude, you're like, what? I got to talk to you, oh, this job needs me to do that. Well, screw that. I don't do this. Like basic stuff like that. You don't need to be a $800 an hour lawyer to tell that person is probably not suitable for this role, right? And you might not want to work with them, right? Like a 21-year-old can tell that, right? So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for these very basic things. Like if they ask you a question at the job interview and you get upset, you get visibly frustrated. They ask you a question, you go like, what a stupid question. It's like, okay, sorry, I don't care what your grades are. I don't care how accomplished you are. No dice. We don't want to work with you if this is your attitude. If you're lying about stuff on your resume, if you say you've got a whole bunch of experience, but you don't, if you say you've got a bunch of educational qualifications, but you don't have them, if you don't seem to know the absolute basic things about the company or the organization, like that signals in their minds, the way they think is that you're just not into this job. You don't care. You don't care about working here specifically. You just want a job. And we're not interested in candidates that want a job. We're interested in candidates that want to work here. They're passionate about working here. So at least they've taken 5 minutes to look at our website. What is this company that's hiring? What are they about? How big are they? What type of work do they do? You should know that stuff. If you don't know that stuff, you fail that test, right? So a 21-year-old can easily assess you on this criteria. And that's what they're doing. They're looking for that basic stuff. Okay. The weird part of this is that if you're talking about, someone was asking about a technician position, right? Doug. I mean, a lot of technicians, God love them, they're introverts, or they're very technical people. They're detail-oriented people. You kind of have to be for a lot of technical roles, especially highly complex stuff. You got to have the mind that likes that and gets into it and finds it fascinating and stimulating. Unfortunately, the flip side can be that you're not that great with people. You have more of a technical mind rather than a social mind. So the problem is they're assessing you on some social elements. If you answer all their questions and you've got this really straight face, you don't look very friendly, you're like, yeah. Are you the type of person that they would want talking to or interacting with their customers? Probably not. I mean, you might have gotten straight A pluses in your qualifications, but they can tell by 5 seconds with you that you're probably not the person they want to send to do work on a customer site where you have to represent our company, and how friendly you are and how much they enjoy dealing with you is a big factor in whether they ask us back to do more work for them, right? So that's kind of the flip side of this. They're assessing you on some of that type of criteria. So you want to have those skills in place, because it's so stupid to not get hired for a job because you didn't have a smile on your face when you went to the interview. What a shame. It might have been the perfect job for you, but you didn't get past the first interview because, you didn't look super friendly. You didn't look approachable and things like this. That's why they get the 21-year-olds in there to look at this basic stuff. And it can be very frustrating and confusing for candidates because they're like, why am I talking to you? You don't know anything about the technical work that I do. I pride myself on having all these accomplishments. You don't even know what those accomplishments are. And you're interviewing me, So they're confused and they're frustrated, and it shows, and they blow the interview because of that. That's what's going on, unfortunately, here. A lot of times. Sometimes companies just don't have a clue what they're doing, but a lot of times this is what's actually going on. Is that your name? Crazy Matsuki. Okay. Crazy Matsuki. I'd love to have a name, Crazy Bill. That would be it sounds like I'm going to sell you a used car of some kind. I'm so crazy, I'm going to sell you this car for really cheap. I applied for a graphic designer role, I guess. Their required experience is less than 2 years. I, on the other hand, have 10 plus. Unfortunately, even if I ace the interview and exams, they go with a 1+ years of experience. Yes, that's the whole overqualified thing. You see, that is based on a theory and an assumption. The theory is that if you have a lot more experience and qualifications than you need to do this job, the theory is that you won't stay working here for very long, because you will immediately you will leave to get a much better paying job somewhere else where they use your full experience and qualifications. Right? That's the theory. And the assumption is that if we hire you, that's how you're going to behave. So now, like anything, the theory is correct sometimes, but not all the time. And their assumption that this is how you will behave is also correct sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes it isn't. Doesn't necessarily mean this, but they have statistical data on this that does tend to suggest that it is a thing. It's something like 60%, possibly up to 70% of people will behave like this. That's what has been found, okay? So based on that, they're making assumptions about you, right? If we hire you, this is how you're going to behave. That's what they're doing, okay? Now, what's the solution? Let's say you apply for a bunch of jobs and you're up against this problem every job you apply for, and no one will hire you for this reason again and again and again. This is what you're up against. What's the solution? The solution, once again, is networking. Okay. I mean, you might eventually, hopefully, keep repeating this process and you get interviewed by like a recruiter or someone that, you know, that you can communicate with. And you could say like, you know, well, I'm just like, for example, I'm a landed immigrant. And yes, in my home country, I have 10 plus years in this industry, but, you know, I'm just looking for an industry related job here and I'll be grateful to get it. You know, I'm not going to immediately leave. You know, I want to find a place here that appreciates me, where I feel like I'm knowledgeable. I feel like I can contribute. And I know the work that you guys do. And if there are opportunities for me to advance within this organization, I'd rather choose those, you know, and like you signal this or you communicate this in some way and they believe you, right? And they give you a chance. Maybe that comes along, but until it does, one thing to try is try to get a job through networking. So then you're not you're not being assessed in this way. Okay. You're not talking to a recruiter that's asking you, how many years experience do you have? You're talking to a hiring manager. What they care about is your attitude and, your passion for things. And they care about your knowledge. And, you know, you're talking to a technical person. So you can have technical conversations about the subject matter. And they can see that you know what you're talking about. And you could explain your situation and they would understand and they say, okay, you know, I think it's worth giving you a shot because I like you. I know I can tell you know your stuff and you have the right attitude. And I believe we are hiring for, you know, technician type positions. You know, I'll see what I can do. Right. So check out networking. Crazy Matsuki. If you aren't doing it already. Okay. That's how to get over this issue. Networking, it's the standard way around many, many issues with the standard hiring process. For example, changing careers, same thing. No one will hire you because you have zero experience in the career you're wanting to move to, right? You say, I've done this for 20 years, but now I want to do this. They look at you and they say, well, how could you ever do this job? You've never done that job before. So therefore, how would you know what to do? Sorry, we're only looking for people that know what they want to do. We all know that's crap, right? It's people change careers every day. You know, you have transportable skills, but that's not how recruiters think. So how do you change careers? You don't go through recruiters. You go through hiring managers. You do things like informational interviews. You reach out to hiring managers and have a conversation with them. After half an hour or an hour or an hour and a half with you, they can tell you'd be a good employee. So there you go. Is that the end of the questions? I think we've gotten to the end of the stream of questions. Maybe I've just talked you guys to death. Anyway, if you are confused about, you know, the various methods of getting a job, you need help with it, maybe you're younger and you're sort of just stepping into this world, check out my course. There we go, this one, the Get Hired course. That has all my recommendations in a logical order, step by step with templates and everything. We go through basic high-level stuff like branding and, you know, all this. That's important if you are changing careers and you're in special situations like that. We go through resumes, we go through interviewing, we go through networking, we go through informational interviews, we go through other methods like broadcasting yourself. You know, so it's all right there, all in one place. So check that out if you are interested. There is a link in the description box below. And while I'm at it, I will also just quickly mention, I've got this thing here. If you want to learn business, here's a course that I created specifically for people who want to learn business. If you are wanting to start a business one day, if that's possibly a goal of yours, or you're wanting to move into management, okay, it's an unaccredited MBA. The reason why it's unaccredited is because there are no assignments or tests. Okay, basically it's a self-study course. What I do is I give you a reading list, and you have all these textbooks. They're not written by me. They are written by some of the best people in the world. They are the textbooks that are used when you take an MBA at places like Harvard University. They are using these same books. So the thing is, here you get the book cheap off of Amazon for like $5, and you read it yourself, and you learn the same material. And is it as comprehensive? Do you get the absolute best experience like you're going to Harvard? No, of course not. But you get the same material. Instead of having a professor read it to you, you read it yourself from the same source. Now, this is a tiny fraction. It's like 1% of the price tag of getting an MBA. So if you don't really care too much about having the piece of paper to try and impress anyone with an accredited MBA, but you want to learn the material to help you in your career, to help you in your job, to be able to know what to do to manage something properly, or to start a business successfully, profitably. If you just want the intrinsic value, check out that course. Link in the description. That's why I created it. Yeah. So this is it's nearly 11:30 my time. So I'm going to be signing off in a few minutes, but I want to thank, there's 32 of you guys here. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Oh, and I want to just share something with you guys here. This was a poll question a few days ago. I should have done this at the very beginning of this live stream, I guess, because it's related to the title of it. If I didn't get offered the job, it's most likely because, and then you guys voted on it. We got 7,000 people voting on this. I'm not qualified to do the job. I'm unemployable, random chance, or others interviewed better than me. Now, I was expecting people to say this, because that is, in my opinion, in my experience, really the answer. If you didn't get offered the job, it's most likely because of random chance. That's the biggest factor. Now, okay, I will give people this because it says better. Other people interviewed better than me. What the hell does better mean? Okay. Fair enough. People said this because better is totally subjective. But the thing is, this is, in my experience, the number one reason why people don't get hired. It's a matter of random chance. You have no idea what people are looking for, and they never reveal their thought processes. Even if you get the job or you don't get the job, if you then go back and ask people, like, why didn't you hire me? Or why did you hire me? You will never get the real, full, honest answer on that. Because sometimes the answers are so embarrassing and stupid, oh, I just like that person better. They were, and maybe they don't even know, oh, it's because that person was taller. They looked more like a manager, this kind of thing. You never know. And people don't want to reveal this, right? It's a very unscientific process. It's about them predicting who will be a better employee. And, that's very unscientific. So it's random chance. You walk into any situation and you don't know what their thought processes are. And I've shared the situation where a person didn't get the job because they supported the wrong sports team. That was the thing. That's based on my personal experience. I observed that happening. I was in the room when that happened, basically. That's just one example of like a whole kaleidoscope of reasons why they might not select you. And it's so stupid, the things that they assess you on. We talked about less than half an hour ago about the 21-year-old recruiter that this is their first career job, and they come from an education in human resources, and they're determining which candidate would be the better technician, right? Right? So they're assessing you on all kinds of weird criteria that they're never going to admit to because it's so amateur and silly. Right? So there you go. Just the last couple of comments here. You're welcome, Crazy Matsuki. I like your name. Great info as always. Thank you. Thank you, Azteca. And Lima says, how to check what kind of profession is most needed in the marketplace currently. Well, hopefully you know how to pull up economic indicators. Maybe we'll go over that next live stream. I'm thinking of doing another one of these tomorrow. I don't have a lot of work for the rest of this month. It's kind of the off season for me for the work that I normally do in consulting and things. So people are kind of take a lot of the summers off. So I was going to do more live streams this week and possibly next week. So maybe we'll get into that and I can show people how to do that. But yeah, it's based on economic data. That's one factor. If you are tuned in to following an industry on social media, that also can help too. Mike says, you were the greatest of all time on YouTube. His advice worked for you. Well, thank you, Mike. That's a great show of support and confidence in me. I appreciate that. And I'm doing God's work, apparently. Well, thank you, Limos. Thank you very much. I appreciate that compliment. And thank you to everybody who showed up today. You guys are awesome. I wish you the best of luck. Job search is like anything else. You know, it's a skill you learn like anything else. Interviewing is a skill you learn. Practice makes perfect. Like learning the theory behind it helps. And then practice makes perfect. And then aside from that, it's like sales. It's just about getting as many leads as you possibly can. So quantity matters. But then, you know, being as good as you possibly can be at the, you know, your part of it, the writing the resume, doing the applications, conducting the interviews. The big theme that I always say is like, if you don't use networking to find a job, start learning about it, start doing some basic research on your own. I go over it in my course, but learn about it. Okay. If you're not already doing it, it's really where all the jobs are. It's certainly where all the good jobs are. Okay. Most people that have jobs got them through some form of networking. They did not get them by responding to job postings on the internet. That's the default method for young people coming out of school. Okay. But it is not the method that most people use to get hired. Okay, usually the jobs we find in the posted job market that you can discover online, those are lower quality jobs. Those are jobs that they can't fill through other means, so they have to post it publicly and go to great expense to do it. They're not great jobs. They require unsuspecting candidates. Maybe you're going to be exploited. You know, things like this. So look into networking. I've got some resources. There's other resources online. Do your best to learn about it and it will serve you well. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm probably going to be back tomorrow, actually, if anyone wants to show up for that. Have a great day and I will see you then. Take care.